I think this is foul, and the people who suffer the most from this is the kids. And so the idea that Lane Kiffin will no longer be able to walk these young boys, these men, out onto the field for the next 3 or 4 weeks is a travesty, in my opinion. A lot of these kids will end up inevitably transferring, and now Ole Miss has to rebuild and start it all over again. And so begins the cycle once again of we were here, now we're here, we were here, and it's just I feel bad for the kids, yo.
Now, Lane Kiffin shook up the coaching world over the weekend, Rodney, but before we get into that, I have to get into Trevone Boykin and his Russell Wilson Thanksgiving story, because Thanksgiving is supposed to be a time where people come together, family, friends. You know, it's very intimate, and obviously Russell Wilson felt close enough to him to invite him over, only for Trevone to then get on a podcast and call it weird.
So I think how your family and your ecosystem celebrates holidays will dictate what you determine to be weird or normal, right? Like I live in Los Angeles, California, is home of the transplant. So that means that most people in LA who are not LA natives don't spend the holidays with their family, and rarely do we even get the opportunity to spend it with our real friends, if our real friendship group is not in Los Angeles, which is my case. So I think it was kind of foul of Trevone Boykin to exploit Russell Wilson's family and friend history for the purpose of being on this podcast, because you may not have why didn't you ask Russ about that? Like, did you if you would have asked Russ, like, yo, where your family and friend, like where are the people who would normally be at a Thanksgiving in my family, where are they at for you? And if Russ would have gave him an answer that was, less than ideal, then cool. But if you just coming on a podcast blabbing your mouth because something was different than what your norm is, I think that's corny as hell.
Yeah. And then went as far as to call, baby Future bad. He said that the only people that were there were Sierra's dad and the children, and then some chefs. And I think that, like, as athletes, right? Like, sometimes Thanksgiving obviously doesn't look like anybody else's Thanksgiving, because you may have practice, you may have to go in for meetings, you may have to play on Thanksgiving Day. And so maybe Russell has this thing with his family where it's like, okay, maybe Thanksgiving isn't good for me. I'm going to do just something really intimate. And then Christmas, everybody can come up. And maybe the rest of his family is doing something with Thanksgiving, where they live or where they're from or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, for me, like, my family came up for Thanksgiving, but I won't see them for Christmas. So for him to think so highly of you, to invite him into the fold where it is very intimate, where he doesn't have a lot of family there, and for then you to go on a podcast and call it weird, I'm like, you just trying to, like, where, I don't even know who is he playing for? Like, what are you doing right now? Because obviously this is all you have to do. And Russell has a beautiful family, and you just decided that you was going to wake up one day and talk about that.
It's a violation of trust. It's a violation of trust, man. Like, if I invite you into the sanctity of my home, don't talk about what goes on in my four walls, unless something like super nasty or super crazy happens. But, if I invite you into the fold of my home with my family, my children there, and then you turn around and you make public fodder out of that, that's corny as hell to me. I don't respect that. That's not real. I believe in masculinity, to the standpoint that there are certain rules and certain decorums that we as men are supposed to operate by. And that for sure is a violation. Like, don't ever talk negatively about my children or my family. But two, if I invite you into my home, respect and honor that space. You know what I'm saying? Like, the podcast thing gets a little convoluted. People just get on certain spaces and platforms and just say whatever they want. And, fortunately and unfortunately, Russell Wilson is not anybody who's going to be able to do anything about this. He's not, he's not going to approach the situation with any level of like ferocity. So, Trevone gets to just do this and get away with it, essentially, except, now people will know going forward not to invite that Negro over. You can't even invite him.
And then the thing is, where was your family at? Where were your friends at? You had nobody. You had to go over there. Okay, so anyways, we previewed Lane Kiffin at the top of the show. Let's get into it now. My gosh. Lane Kiffin is now the head coach at LSU. I'm sorry, it's not your boy, the Honey Badger, but it's okay. But the timeline was so crazy on this, Rodney, because if you remember last week, the AD Keith Carter at Ole Miss said, Lane is not going to give us an answer until after the Egg Bowl. I thought that was strange. I was like, okay, if he's going to stay, he would have just announced that he stayed. I knew he was gone. Then the Egg Bowl comes. They win the Egg Bowl handedly, great. They were supposed to meet after the Egg Bowl. They did not. The next day, Saturday, they met all day. They met all day. I don't even think they came to a conclusion that day. I think Sunday is when Lane officially let them know that he was going to go to Baton Rouge. And Keith Carter released a statement saying, like, yeah, you're done. Like, effective immediately, you're done. And that has, like, people in a frenzy because people are divided on whether or not Lane should have been able to continue to coach because Ole Miss could potentially have this historic season that they've never had before. And now he has to just drop everything. That is crazy for me to think about because, like, you put all this work into this, and because you want a better opportunity, you got to just let it go. And if they go on to the national championship game, something that Ole Miss has never done before, you just got to look at home.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I don't know that LSU is necessarily a better situation than Ole Miss, and I'm saying that like I know LSU is a more gaudy university, right? It's higher up the totem pole, but I think the lack of pressure at Ole Miss created the environment that Lane Kiffin has been able to thrive in for this particular season. And I think under the lights of LSU, if you do not perform year in, year out, that leash gets extremely short. As far as him having to be forced out before the season is complete, I think this is foul, and the people who suffer the most from this is the kids, right?
Yes.
Like these are people who have bought in, who have committed to the idea, the concept of this coach, and the football locker room is very different. These men, they have their own birthright fathers for sure, but there is somewhat of a father-son relationship that gets cultivated in football locker rooms, which is very different than any other kind of locker room. And so the idea that Lane Kiffin will no longer be able to walk these young boys, these men out onto the field for the next 3 or 4 weeks is a travesty, in my opinion. A lot of these kids will end up inevitably transferring, and now Ole Miss has to rebuild and start it all over again. And so begins the cycle once again of we were here, now we're here, we were here, and it's just I feel bad for the kids, yo. I feel bad for them.
Yeah, because that's like you mentioned that's ultimately is who is hurting the most. Um,
Hold on. Did you see the
this
fans? Did you see the fans booing him, giving him the finger as he boarded his private jet? Did you see that?
yes, they said
Yeah.
that they're calling him a hoe. They said you can't turn a hoe into a housewife.
Yeah.
It's crazy how people switch up on you, but for me, this was not a surprise. I think that Lane really is waiting for that Alabama job, to be honest. But I think that Ole Miss was just an opportunity for him to get back into the SEC, right? Because he was down at FAU for a couple of seasons, did well there. He got the Ole Miss gig. But if you watched his demeanor the whole time he was there, he wasn't really happy. Like Ole Miss, they like to drink, they like to party. The student section, there was a lot of times where after the game he was begging fans to stay at the game. He's like, why are y'all leaving to go tailgate? Like, I want y'all to stay. They're not doing that at LSU, right? Like LSU is one of those schools where like the fans are going to be there if they're winning or losing. That is just crazy. But Ole Miss is never going to have the resources to get over the hump in the SEC because for years they were in the West where you had to get through LSU, you had to get through Alabama, maybe Auburn sometimes. You know what I mean? Like it was very tough on the West. I had to throw that in there. It was very
Yeah, get
tough
out of
on
here.
the West. And so they don't have the resources where at LSU they came in and was like, we're going to give you a number. This is your recruiting number. Like I'm sure his mind was like, okay, I can do so much more. I can get so many guys in because now obviously it's all about the money. But
What
it
has
is
Lane
sad that
Kiffin
he's
won?
not
What has Lane Kiffin won? Let's talk about that real
not
quick. Like,
not as a head coach. We know that he's won as an offensive coordinator when he was at Alabama, and obviously we know that coaching staff was stacked with
what
now
has
head
Lane
coaches.
what has Lane Kiffin won as a standalone man on his own island? What has he won?
He's
Nothing.
won a few Egg Bowls.
Yeah. So this is something
And
to
I
be
think,
said
and
about
that's
that as
right.
well.
And that's what I'm saying. And I think that that's why he feels like he has to go bigger because there's a better opportunity for him to win at LSU than it was at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
That's
To
what
do
I
it
think. I don't know.
Yeah, just to make that decision now. Like if there was a kid who wanted, people would kill a kid. If a kid wanted to transfer in the middle of the season and it was like, you know what, right before the tournament starts, hey, actually, y'all, I'm good. I'm gonna go over here and head to Miami, and I'm gonna kick it with them throughout the rest of the season because next year that's where I'm playing. People would kill that kid. That kid would be
But
thrown under
but
the bus.
but the
But what?
university would do the same thing. If a kid decided that he was going to hit the portal, you're gone immediately. We're taking your
Mm,
housing, we're taking your car. No, like you remember we had the guys
we,
on that did the blue chippers, right? From Louisiana, and they were talking about the kid that was at Texas A&M, and he said that he was going to hit the portal, and they took everything from him. He couldn't even finish the semester because he had nowhere to live. He had no
my
car to drive.
my point is that there's a transfer window, and generally, like transfers do not announce intent to transfer before the season is out. That's all I'm saying. Like that, this
Mm.
is it's a rarity that happens for the kids. And if a kid were to, like you just said, even insinuate that he was looking to transfer or leave a program, then he would be killed for it. So I don't understand why we're even making Lane Kiffin make this decision at this point in the season. Like this is crazy.
So the
This is
problem is
this
this
is
is
like
this
leaving
is
your
the
wife
issue.
while she's 8 months pregnant. She's 8 months pregnant. You can't just leave her. That's what this is. Baby about to be born.
The the issue is you have early signing period and everybody wants to get ahead of the eight ball. I did a short on this a couple of weeks ago because I was like, why are all these teams firing head coaches so early in the season? Is because they're trying to get ahead. And
Mm,
that's what they're trying to do at Ole Miss. They're like, okay, we got to figure out who is going to be the coaching staff of the future. We got to go and find a head coach when all of them have been picked over by now
yeah.
because we got to start recruiting. Because signing day, you have early signing day in this month, and then you got the one in February. And so they're trying to get ahead of it. And they know that there are going to be a lot of kids that are going to follow him to LSU. Your
For
coaching
sure.
staff is going to follow him to LSU. So their thought process is really like this, the rest of the season, we don't even care about. We're trying to get ahead of next year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see also who ends up as the head coach at Penn State. Just want to throw that out there. They fired James Franklin, and it feels like the coaching carousel has skipped over Penn State, which says a lot
Yeah.
about that program, where they stand, how people view them. And so, just want to throw that out there.
It is going to be very interesting to see how well Lane Kiffin does at LSU because he's getting so much more money in his pocket as well as money towards recruiting. If he does
Yo,
not win at LSU, I think that's going to be a wrap for Lane because he's gotten a lot of opportunities as a head coach. A lot.
mediocre white men they get to respawn as many times as they want. As many times as they want. But this is a pretty long segment. Let's go ahead and wrap this thing on up. Y'all let us know your thoughts on Trevone Boykin violating the privacy of being invited into a man's home by going on a podcast and talking negatively about Russell Wilson. Was he out of bounds? Should he get his ass whooped? Y'all let us know in the comment section. And then also let us know how you feel about Lane Kiffin departing Ole Miss for LSU in the middle of the season. We look forward to hearing your commentary.
And if you want more information on other big sports stories that are happening right now, please click the link in our description box. We have a newsletter there keeping you up to date on all the latest happenings. Please go do that for me. Thank you.